Hello, everyone. Looks like we made it to the other side. Just give everyone a few minutes to join. So while we're waiting, we'll just do a quick icebreaker. So any summer travel plans for you guys coming up?
Ooh, good question. Elizabeth, Pri, I'll let you guys go first. I got to think about where I'm going this summer.
Sure. Yeah, I'm from Michigan originally, and I think we're like contractually obligated to go up north. So there's definitely a week where I'll be in Traverse City.
Yeah. Everybody I know from Michigan has a house on a lake somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Or knows somebody and that you're required to go see. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm doing kind of the opposite of a relaxing lake. I'm going to New York City for a couple of days. It's been a while since we've gone to the city, so
that'll be fun.
Yeah,
that'll be fun. Are you gonna go to a show, or is it just dinner?
I don't know yet. I haven't gotten that far in the planning, but likely good food, some touristy things, and a show as well.
Oh, great! I'm going to Greece. I've never been to Greece. I've heard it's pretty interesting. We're gonna go Athens for a few days and then go to the islands for a few days. So hopefully that'll be fun. And then towards the end of the summer, I'm gonna go to Hawaii with the family. Yeah, so I'm excited.
Awesome. I am going to Europe in September. So not quite the summer, but yeah, excited for that. Doing a tour of bathhouses. So pretty cool.
Very specific.
It sounds that is a very specific vacation.
In Berlin and Hungary and a few other places. Yeah, very excited. Looking forward to it.
That is incredible.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get started, guys. So here today, we're meeting today to talk about tackling the 4 biggest issues impacting SaaS comp plans today. Very exciting with these awesome panelists. We're super excited about the amazing content and takeaways that y'all are going to get out of this event today. And today's event is brought to you by Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you not familiar, Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. Our mission is to create an environment for members to answer questions they'd struggle to solve on their own. No need to reinvent the wheel on your own. We got you covered here. And we're here to help you see around corners that they may not know about. We do that through live sessions like the one that you're about to witness today, an online forum, and quarterly summits. And we're starting to get back into in-person events as well. We have some exciting stuff coming up this year, so hope to see some of y'all face-to-face in person. If you're not already a part of the MSP, you'll be invited to join after this event. But enough about MSP. Today's session wouldn't be possible without our lovely sponsorship from the team over at Performio. And now I'm going to hand it off to Grayson Morris to say a few great words about Performio. Grayson?
Thanks, Roxy. By the way, I love the way that you've arranged your logos in the rainbow colors, like whoever did that.
Thank you for noticing. It's a fun challenge every time we get a new sponsor.
Yeah. I'm going to change our colors just to make it difficult for you. They're going to be our logo is going to now be a rainbow, just to see what you do with it.
Just in time for June.
Yeah, thanks, Roxy. So I'm Grayson Morris. I'm the CEO of Performio. We are a modern sales commission software company. I'm in Southern California, but like many of you folks on this call, we have people all over the country in Australia, India, Europe. So a global organization. If you need help automating your sales commission calculations, give us a shout. But yeah, excited to be here, Roxy. So thanks for having us. Should I launch into the intros of Elizabeth and Priya?
No, let me go over some quick housekeeping rules. Actually, we'll keep it very brief. Thank you for asking, though. So yeah, as far as housekeeping rules, this event is being recorded. You'll be able to access the recording and the key takeaways on the previous events page of the MSP website. Second, if you have a question for our panelists, please don't hesitate to ask them. You as the attendees are more than encouraged to participate. So you can use that using the Q&A function or the chat function, and we'll be sure to touch upon your questions at some point. And that's about it as far as housekeeping. And go ahead, Grayson, you can take it away and introduce Elizabeth and Priya.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Roxy. By the way, you guys, if you're out there listening to my voice, please do ask a lot of questions today. I think we're, as you can see from the title, we're going to be tackling some of the issues affecting SaaS comp plans. Most of you folks on this call are probably in the SaaS business, SaaS industry. We had chatted about the right topic. So ask a lot of questions. We're going to keep this pretty informal and more of a fireside chat. So we hope to hear from you guys, and we'll answer the relevant questions kind of in line as we go through our conversation today. Maybe some of the ones that are a little bit less relevant to the specific point we're talking about, we'll save those to the end. All right, you guys. So really excited to be joined today by Priya Gotnikar and Elizabeth Watson from the Alexander Group. Priya and Elizabeth are experts in incentive comp plan design and sort of general go-to-market strategy. Both of them are in the Chicago office, so I'll kick it over to each of you guys. Priya, maybe just say a couple of sentences about yourself, and then we'll go to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Grayson. Excited to speak with you all today in regards to sales compensation. I've been with the Alexander Group nearly coming on 10 years now and grew up in the comp space. I spend a considerable amount of my time working with technology companies and manufacturing companies. So we'll be able to share some real perspective here today. Elizabeth?
Great. Thanks, Priya.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm a director out of our Chicago office. And I spend a decent amount of my time in healthcare manufacturing, but I'm a lead in our digital transformation practice. And so it's understanding how technology impacts the way we interact with our customers, but also how we enable our reps. And there's a lot of compensation implications that come out of that. And so really looking forward to the discussion today.
As are we, you guys. All right, so Elizabeth and Priya, you guys are experts in SaaS sales comp plan design, so they're gonna share some interesting insights with us today. We're gonna keep this informal, like I said. Feel free to fire away with questions. All right, let's go to the next slide, you guys. All right, so you guys, there's a lot going on in the world right now, right? Obviously we just went through a crazy 2.5 year period where we had a global pandemic. Apparently that's not over based on what I'm seeing again, so I guess we're still in it. We're going through a potential post-pandemic recession here. SaaS valuations have been cratering. Inflation is happening. The Great Resignation is happening. I mean, there's a lot going on right now in the world. We've sort of identified these 4 major topics affecting SaaS comp plan design. So let's just give a high-level overview of each of these. Maybe Priya, we'll start with you. What's going on with hybrid work? Give us kind of the overview there. How that's affecting sales comp plans.
Yeah, I think in regards to hybrid work, I mean, depending on who you talk to, it might be full return to office or just a little bit of virtual as well. So, we're thinking through what changes need to be made to the comp plans to accommodate this new hybrid roles that we're seeing pop up in the industry. Good.
I'm excited to dive into that one because I know personally we're experiencing that as well. We're now fully remote, so it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on that. Elizabeth, why don't you take the second bullet point here around just employee retention?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Great Resignation earlier, so I think everybody probably on the line is really familiar and experiencing that themselves. And so we've been really thinking through how is comp, of course, helping, and there's probably some obvious ways we'll talk about there. But there's ways too that comp can actually hurt our turnover as well. And so what are some of the things we can do to avoid those mistakes as well?
Yeah, it's such a tough hiring environment right now. You definitely do not want to be doing anything in your companies that's actually hurting retention.
Agreed.
All right, Priya, what about this third bullet point here? Just sort of emerging plan designs.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is, it's no longer the world we were living in 2020, but we're really not sure what the future holds. So a bit of a shift back to individual contributor metrics, right? And what strategic initiatives are our businesses taking? How can we incorporate them into our compensation plans?
That's going to be an exciting one. All right, last one, Elizabeth, high level, what about this last bullet point here around sort of the spread of incentive comp across the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen a lot of roles evolve and shift over the past couple of years. And then we've also seen technology enable, marketing, for example, to be able to cover certain segments of accounts. And so you've got new people outside of our traditional sales organization that are influencing customers, maybe driving sales that we haven't seen before. So we're becoming more open-minded for who might be eligible for a sales compensation plan. So we can talk about that today as well.
All right, thanks guys. Let's get into it. So we can probably kill the slides and just kind of keep it informal. There you go. All right, so let's start off with this first one, Priya. personally, we've had experience with this, right? The recession or the pandemic hits in February, March of 2020. Everybody goes home for the most part. Those of us that can work from home that are fortunate enough to do so. That looks like it's sticking, or at least some hybrid version of that. What is that doing to incentive comp plans? I mean, again, kind of walk us through what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in regards to this hybrid world that we're living in, we've really had to understand what are the jobs doing. So a lot of our compensation metrics that we want to bring into the comp plan really tied to what we're asking roles to do. And I think with this new hybrid work from home scenario, we're seeing additional roles that are coming to the table, right? So we might have a product specialist that is now 100% work from home. I dial into a meeting, I demo a product. That's great. And with that, Elizabeth can talk more about the digital, what new roles we're seeing from that perspective come into organizations. And then finally, the last piece is, look, we're productive, right? I can dial into a Zoom meeting a lot easier than I can going to a sales call in person. So we're seeing an increase in productivity, right? So role focus, inclusion of new roles, and then this uptick in productivity. I don't know, Elizabeth. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, sorry, in terms of the new roles, are there new roles that are being developed simply because people are working from home, or is it more that some of these existing roles are now just much more focused on, like the product specialist role you mentioned? How has that changed from folks working from home now?
Yeah, I think we have a little bit of both going on. So one being, driving more focus in terms of what we're asking them to do. So I might just I come in, I talk about a product, I do the demos, and I can do 10 of those a day, right? So that would be kind of a narrower focus of a role that we've seen play out very well in the field when we would actually go in and do a demo in front of a customer.
Got it.
Yeah.
So in general, are quotas going up? Are you seeing quotas going up? Does it depend on the industry? Does it depend on the role? Or I could see both arguments there, right? Where like, hey, you're a lot more productive. You're working from home. You're not jumping on planes. So your quota is going to be going up versus, hey, maybe your close rate has gone down because you're not getting on the plane and going to visit customers. Like, what are you seeing around quotas and how is that changing?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like quotas always tend to go up, but in this as well, with productivity being higher because you can do those 10 meetings, yeah, we're seeing an uplift in the ask from our sellers. So your quota has gone up X%. Maybe it's a little bit more than it has been historically in the past because we can be more focused in our role. We're asking you not to do less, but a narrower scope, and you've got maybe more hours in the day to do it.
Okay, so any sales rep who's on this call is disappointed to hear that, but all the incentive comp plan administrators are probably fired up in sales leadership. So that makes sense. What about Elizabeth? Anything to add to this particular topic? Kind of what you've been seeing with your clients around work from home?
I think the biggest thing around work from home is more around, I think over the past couple of years, companies have really saw the need and COVID really made it necessary to invest in technology and data. And to really make sure that, reps, because they couldn't be going in person as often, had more information at their fingertips. So what that meant was, it lent to some of the productivity pieces that Priya was talking about. So I have things like, lead scoring tools and market intelligence data that we just didn't have in the past because we weren't making those investments. But because we're bringing more data into the workplace, because again, we're getting more creative as we're trying to sell from home. It's allowing us to also think about, newer, more specific measures that we can track because we have access to that data now. And so I think we'll talk about that probably in what we're seeing coming up in the newer plans. But certainly that shift to working from home, being forced to be more focused, has driven a lot of that investment, which is having some of the implication around comp and quotas.
Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, let me just repeat that just so the audience and I'm clear, but everyone starts working from home. That drives the adoption of more tooling, more systems to allow that work from home environment to occur, which in turn allows us to surface more interesting metrics and sort of newer performance measures that we may not have seen in the past. And now we can actually pay on those as well, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe like some activity measures potentially, or some other stuff as well. Okay. That's exciting. Yeah, I mean, look, we've seen this, personally, I've seen this in our company as well, right? Where we have seen productivity go up quite a bit, right? So we've definitely raised quotas, and we've also seen, we sell into the sales ops, right? Our product is sales commission software, and it certainly has been one of those categories that's benefited from folks working from home. It's from more adoption of tools. So that makes total sense. Okay, so in terms of productivity, Priya, have you seen this vary by segment or by industry? If you think about like the different segments we might all sell to, some of us on this call might sell to the SMB, some maybe mid-market or enterprise. Has productivity gone up across the board, or does that vary by segment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies by segment and by industry. So by segment, the nature of the small to medium business space is a little bit more transactional, right? So, you can make potentially more sales calls there. So productivity upticks in that look differently than maybe our enterprise accounts, right? They're used to getting that in-person attention. And when I say used to, this is pre-2020. So, making that shift, it has taken a little bit longer. But overall, I think, productivity has increased there. And also by industry. I mean, I think of tech, where I spend a good amount of my time. They are, tech savvy. They're enabled. They did not necessarily have to switch overnight to working from home and getting very comfortable with the tools that Elizabeth was just talking about. So, some other industries, manufacturing, distributors, it might have been a little bit of a learning curve, right, to get more familiar with engaging in this way.
Sure. And I would imagine that, again, thinking about SaaS companies and software companies that folks are on this call, if you're depending on the industry you're selling to, you're going to see increased productivity or lower productivity, right? There's some folks out there that I'm sure are sold, if you were selling software, to real estate customers essentially, or, to customers that, benefited from people being in the office, you were in trouble, right? I mean, the pandemic was tough for you. Whereas if you were selling software that benefited, like Zoom, for instance, or software that benefited from folks working from home, I'm sure you saw your productivity go through the roof. So, anyway, I imagine that does vary by which industry you're selling into as well. But okay, that makes sense. So overall, higher productivity, quotas are going up, roles are becoming a little bit more specialized and more focused, and that probably does vary by segment and by industry. All right. Thanks guys for that one. Let's go to the next major topic that we're seeing affecting SaaS comp plans today, and that's all about employees, right? It is a very difficult hiring environment out there for SaaS companies. I know we're seeing this personally in-house. A lot of my friends who are also in other SaaS companies are seeing this. Obviously, we want to retain all the talent we have, and we want to attract more talent. Elizabeth, maybe we'll start with you on this one. How is sort of this really difficult hiring environment and this sort of focus on employee retention affecting incentive comp plans, and who's doing it right here and who's doing it wrong?
Yeah, so I'll start with what is probably an obvious one, and I'm sure everybody's seeing it as they're putting out offers to folks. But in our research across industry, total cash is going up. So we're having to provide larger total target compensation. And we're seeing more of that increase go into base. The hypothesis too is, folks want a little bit more stability after the past couple of years. And so, we're seeing, of course, the increase in both base and variable, but it certainly is impacting bases as well, that fixed cost. So I think that's probably no surprise to folks on the call, but it's a comp call. So we thought we'd mention that.
It's absolutely. What if you had to ballpark it in terms of how much OTE has gone up in the last year or two? I mean, is that possible for you to do? I'm just curious what you would say there. Yeah,
I mean, I think I'm really
on a percentage basis.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with some of the healthcare benchmarks, but it's we're looking at anywhere from to 10% depending on the industry.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. So if you were a company that was paying 250K OTE, you're now paying 275 or maybe even 300 for similar roles.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a second area that we're also seeing some of this impact is not just on OTE, but if we think about, typically when we're building comp plans, there's accelerated rates after you hit your targets. And so, or after you hit certain milestones, those are starting to increase as well, because it's a way to communicate high earning potential, but also align it to goal achievement for your organization. So it's the on-target earnings, but also seeing some of those accelerated rates increase as well. So maybe your top earners, 2 years ago were earning 2 times their target incentive, and then today they're earning 2.5 or 3 times their target incentive.
Great.
But it's a nice way, again, to tie that to some of the revenue.
So good. Okay, so the sales reps on this particular call were bummed about the first point in terms of quotas going up, but now they're excited that OTEs are going up, right? So there you have it, guys. We're keeping it balanced. What Elizabeth, are there any companies that are just doing this poorly, or that you're seeing people? Are you seeing companies make mistakes around incentive comp right now that's actually increasing turnover?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 big things. I think one is there's had to be a lot of on-the-fly changes, and given especially industries that were really impacted by COVID, and so folks that have not handled some of the change management very well have seen some comp really impacting that turnover. So folks, especially when they're at home and it's more of a hybrid working environment, feeling like there's not a lot of clarity into how their comp's getting calculated or what they're getting paid on. We're seeing a lot of that really impact some of the turnover. And then the other thing that's been really challenging, and I think if anybody says that they figured out quota setting, they could probably become millionaires, because it's something that we're all, constantly refining.
Yeah.
But just given some of the volatility, trying to set quotas, I think, has been really tough. So folks have been, reporting the fact that they feel like they just can't achieve their goals. And so maybe I do have this great, on target earnings potential, but I'm not going to be able to get to my target. And so that's been something that I think has been impacting a lot of folks. And I think, one other thing I think I'd be remiss to mention, I know it's a comp call, but one of the things that we are seeing out there is a focus only on comp. And so we do like to remind people that there's other things that I think people are also interested in as we talk about, recruiting folks, which is providing them the right working environment, showing career pathing. So, for thinking about comp, here's your potential earnings in this role today, but you've got, you can continue to grow, and here's what that OTE looks like in the future. So it's certainly, comp related, but would be remiss to say if, there aren't other things that could impact that as well.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think your point about communication is a great one. It's like, if you are changing comp plans, or if you are struggling with a quota setting and you're going to be adjusting this, you gotta over communicate, right? I mean, these folks they're out there in the world selling for you. They're sitting on their laptops at home. Some of them feel like they're on an island. Like, you have to really double up there.
Yeah, and you could be, and Pri will have I think a good story for later, but you could communicate, positive news, and you could be implementing positive news, and if it's not communicated appropriately, reps just don't trust it, and they don't understand. If it's not clear and transparent, you could be doing good things, and it still might have a negative perception.
Yeah, totally agree. Priya, do you have anything to add around this particular topic? Where are you seeing companies do anything interesting around retaining employees, or conversely doing anything poorly around pushing employees out the door accidentally?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, keeping and retaining employees, the increased focus on training, career pathing is something that, I haven't seen before. We're seeing much, much more communication around that. So Elizabeth, to your point around, you can come in and then you can continue to grow. This is a path for you. And this is the culture we have at the organization. So those are also other tools or selling points that surround the compensation plan. And then the other thing is first line managers. Like, if you think about it, the people in those seats are kind of the link between the folks that are selling and your leadership. So, one way to, I'm not necessarily going to say it's going to stop your turnover, but that role, making sure that they understand the comp plan, they can communicate it to their sellers and coach them in a way to hit those goals is incredibly important. So talent, again, and making sure you have the right individuals in that first line manager sales role is really important.
Yeah, totally.
The only thing I'll add to that too is if we think about some of the change management piece I was talking about before, people are really kind of desperate for that transparency. And so it's providing some of the tools as well, and the enablement when we're making any sort of change, or we're providing even a new person with a comp plan. It's providing not only the plan doc, but things like compensation calculators and, full transparency into how they would get paid depending on different performance scenarios. And so those things also help if you're changing a plan or if you're recruiting new people to the organization.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's really motivating too for a seller to go into, a calculator tool like that and say, okay, if I close this next deal for $2 million, I get an additional $75K in incentive, and I can kind of see how my efforts translate to my take-home pay.
I know it's so tempting to think that your job is done, and probably as a sales comp administrator, just to come up with a plan and roll it out and start administering it. But really communicating to the reps like exactly what it means and how each deal is going to affect your pay. I mean, I'm shocked at how little. When we talk to a lot of customers and we talk to a lot of sales reps around their comp, and I'm shocked at how little sales reps actually understand the way that they get paid and the mechanisms that they get paid. Is that common in your experience too? If you talk to the sales reps and their clients, and do you ask them like, hey, do you truly understand all the different measures you're getting paid on? And do you see that confusion?
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think especially as we talk about the ability to measure more things, people are tempted to then bring on some additional measures, and then people are in not only the measures, but then we're calculating maybe different rates for each one, and you might have a threshold for one and not a threshold for the other, and so it's not uncommon if it's not communicated clearly that folks are not understanding how they get paid.
100% agreed. And oftentimes the comp rules are buried in a Word document, that's 15 pages long, right? And it's like if you expect your sales reps to really read that whole thing and understand exactly what they're eligible for and how they're going to get paid, it's just not going to happen, right? So, you really do have to over communicate, make it crystal clear, schedule those sessions. No, that's great advice, you guys. So that's, all right, let's keep it moving then. I think the third sort of major issue that we identified around issues affecting SaaS comp plans today is around its emerging plan designs. And Elizabeth, you sort of touched on this kind of earlier, where you started to talk about all these new tools and systems that companies are buying now that are surfacing all these new metrics. So let's get into that. Priya, maybe we'll kick it off with you. What are you seeing out there? What's new with respect to plan designs, particularly in SaaS? What are companies doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus on multi-year is something that very much comes to mind when we think about SaaS compensation. So essentially, you want your sellers to go in and lock in longer term contracts. So a 3-year contract is great. If you could do a 4-year, even better. So how we're seeing that translate to the compensation plan is, we're paying a bit more for those longer term contracts, right? And it's to drive reps to go in and ask for and sell to the 4-year deal versus the 3-year deal. And if that's something that the organization really wants to push, I've also seen kind of this becoming a stick. So if you don't sell the 3-year deal, and if you sell a 1-year deal, the credit is less, right? So it's really driving that focus on multi-year. How strongly do we want to communicate that through our compensation plan?
Got it. And Priya, is that new? This focus on multi-year, is that changing, or has that always been there?
I mean, it's not new, but I think the focus on using it as table stakes in a deal is what we're seeing more and more of. So while the 3-year deal was something that we were really overcompensating for because we wanted to drive that behavior since it was new, we're seeing that be as, no, you always go for the 3-year contract. And if you don't, you can potentially have some dings in regards to an incentive compensation.
Yeah.
I think it varies, by organization.
Yeah. So companies are now starting with the default is like, hey, we sell 3-year deals, and if you sell a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, you can do it, but you're gonna get penalized a little bit.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
brutal.
probably not going to go through. You're going to get questioned on it. So why is this structured as a 1-year deal? And it'll have to likely go up a chain of approvals to get to the point of deal close.
Got it. And the multi-year components that you're seeing, are they typically kickers that kind of sit on top of sort of a basic kind of target-based incentive plan for around ARR or ACV?
Right.
Like exactly adding another 1%, 2%, 3% to the deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got it. Okay. What about you, Elizabeth? By the way, you guys, I see some questions in the Q&A. We'll hit these in a second, so I apologize if I missed those. But maybe Elizabeth, let me get your take on sort of emerging plan designs, and then we'll go to some of these questions.
Yeah, so I think 2 things. I think as folks are starting to design plans, and we're getting all of the new measures, and administration is becoming automated, people are tempted to make things a little bit more complicated. So you're seeing things like scorecards come into play, so that you can start to try to address these things that Priya was talking about. How can we incentive, of course, on revenue, but the multi-year contracts. So you're seeing some of that start to pop up, especially now that we have the ability to track and measure it.
Elizabeth, can you just describe what you mean by scorecard? I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, so it can be, essentially depending on what's strategically important to the organization. So think of things like, you'll have your base ACV that you're going to measure, but then you're going to have multi-year contracts. You might have a strategic product in there. You might have a certain segment that you're trying to grow of customers that now you can track and measure the revenue that's going towards those customers. And so I think because you've got all this information at your fingertips and you can, again, track and measure it, folks are starting to incorporate it into some more complex type of mechanics, like a scorecard, where you're saying, okay, if you're hitting, X, Y, and Z are true, you can then get Y. We're still always going to advocate for simple. But it's all about, how do we take all this new information and be able to drive the right behaviors in a clear and concise way to our reps.
That's okay. So that's interesting. So scorecard, meaning like if I sell a deal, there's going to be a scorecard associated with that deal, and there might be 3 or 4 things, and depending on how I measure on each of those metrics, it'll affect my pay. I mean, that sounds pretty complex. Are you a fan of that? Is that working?
Generally, we're a fan of keeping things as simple as possible. So, we're always going to say no more than 3 measures. And so if there's a way, I think the argument is we've got all this information, we can automate it more now than we ever could before. So if there's a way to make it so that it's clear for the reps, that's certainly something that people are starting to explore. But we'll always say, again, if there's a segment or a product, certainly find the way to incorporate it, but no more than 3 measures if you can.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. But it's funny, right? Because when you think, the scorecard, though, it could be 3 measures for 3 measures make sense to me. Usually those are independent. You can kind of wrap your head around it as a salesperson. But if those 3 measures are sort of dependent on each other and deal specific, I can see that even getting more complex. So probably I would stay away from that. I agree. What about, are you seeing more of a focus on activity metrics? Like how many calls you make and how many emails are you sending? How many meetings are you holding? As companies are tracking activities more closely now that people are working from home. Are you seeing that?
We're definitely tracking it, but we're not paying on it. So we'll advocate, still, of course, it's a great part of performance management. We're able to look at things a lot more now than in detail than we were in the past, but still try to comp on production metrics as much as possible.
Interesting. Yeah. That one's probably a hot topic among some companies, right? Should you be comping on activity? I think there's some new companies out there that are doing some interesting stuff around enabling companies to pay on activity-based metrics. I don't know exactly how well that's going, but all right. So I want to quickly hit these questions, you guys. So Ashley asked about the split between the base and the variable pay. I think this was kind of going back to your comment, maybe Elizabeth, around OTEs going up. It sounded like you were basically saying the split might be changing a little bit. Like, is there sort of a higher base percentage now that you're seeing out there in the world?
We're seeing a slight uptick in base. So we're still seeing, total OTE needs to go up. But let's say, maybe before 50 would go into base, 50 would go into TI, maybe 60 is going into base now. And we're seeing a slight increase there. Interesting.
And what do you attribute that to? Just basically luring people away from their existing jobs in a tight hiring environment, just less uncertainty? Is it anything more complex than that?
I don't think so. I think it's, looked at Priya here too, but it's mostly just around people, especially after the last couple of years, are preferring a little bit more stability.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then Sam asks, are you paying upsell ARR at the same rate as new business ARR? This is a tough one. And you guys, Priya, do you have any thoughts on that one? I think that's probably very company specific.
Yeah, that's a great question, because my mind immediately goes to, do we have the same role doing both of those things? Or do we have a hunter role that is focused on new business? You pay them on that new business ARR and another account manager, farmer type of role, they get paid on that upsell ARR. However, if you do have a sales role that's responsible for landing new customers and then driving expansion or upsell in their existing accounts, yeah, you tend to pay more for that new business ARR versus the upsell. And you can do it in a couple of different ways, whether it's a different commission rate or a different pot of dollars allocated towards your new business measure and your upsell ARR measure. That's a pretty meaty question, but my mind goes back to the roles. What are you asking them to do? And then as an organization, I mean, is your strategic growth objective to land new logos? In most cases, yes, that's a big focus of growth. We might be willing to pay more and considerably more in some instances for that new business.
Yeah. Sam, that's a good one. I think it's also dependent on how easy it is to get that upsell. Some products really naturally lend themselves to expansion, and others really take a huge selling effort to get there. But yeah, I've seen that one all over the map. And then Karen asks, is there a typical OTE to quota ratio that is being used right now? I don't. Do you guys have an opinion on this one? I've seen, everything from 5 or 6 to 1, 5 or 6 kind of OTE to 1 to, OTE to quota down to 3 to 1. That's kind of the range that I'm typically used to. Do you guys have an opinion on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the range I'm thinking kind of goes in line with that. A couple of things to think through. Would it be the segment, right? Because quotas for our SMB space tend to be lower, of course, than somebody playing in the enterprise part of the market. Pay levels differ as well, but I think your range, Grayson, that you threw out of the 3 to 5 is where my mind goes as well.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't really have the luxury of manipulating this too much too. It's like you have kind of a market rate you have to pay to get the reps you need to get. And you have sort of a quota that's achievable, and it kind of is what it is, right? And so frankly, if you're able to get 6, 7, 8 to 1 on OT to quota, then good for you guys. You have or quota to OT, I should say. You have a great business. All right, let's take fourth major point, you guys. So we're seeing an expansion of incentive comp across the organization. It's the tentacles of incentive comp are reaching out into the other parts of the company. What's going on there? I think Elizabeth, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah.
What are you seeing here?
Yeah, so it's a range, and I can maybe start from the top of the funnel down to the bottom. And so, if we think about the top of the funnel, given new technology and folks, really meeting customers where they're looking for information, you're seeing roles in marketing, for example, that are influencing the sale. And if we've got the capability to, let's say they click on something online and we can drive them to the website and they can purchase online, they technically haven't really interacted with one of our sales reps through that transaction. And so, some folks are starting to think through, especially as we can really track click rates and understand where these deals are coming from, should there be folks in marketing that might be eligible for sales incentive comp? We're also seeing, marketing act as coverage for certain segments. So you've got that really long tail of accounts with very low revenue. They might be managed mostly through, programmatic campaigns through the marketing department. And maybe there might be some reactive touch from a sales rep, but for the most part, marketing is acting as coverage for those accounts. And then if you kind of move it along, we're seeing, once we've maybe qualified a lead and then you can talk to somebody, there's sales development reps or there's chat folks from the chat that meet them on the website that can help, answer questions, generate that lead, maybe pass them along to a sales rep that can help close the deal. So now you're talking through, some of those, what we'll call like a sales development rep, for example, who might not be closing sales, but they're certainly generating the leads and making it easier for our reps to be more productive and close those deals. Yeah. And then if we think about post-sales, it's more and more common for customer success, for example, to take on more of just support, but more proactively driving expansion opportunities. And so it's not uncommon where we're seeing, that customer success organization start to get put on, at-risk comp as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the SDR BDR thing makes total sense. Marketing, I absolutely think marketing should be on, some sort of incentive comp plan, right? They are absolutely, there's measurable performance there that you could be paying on. And there's probably a cultural shift that has to happen there, I would imagine, for that to kind of happen at a broad scale, right? Marketing is probably not used to that but customer success as well, right? No reason why expansion and upsell. What about you, Priya? Are you seeing the same thing? You know, kind of marketing, customer success, the SDR, BDRs, obviously. Are you seeing it? Are you seeing that similar in your clients?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like, we've got tech folks on the call here. Customer success has been very much the hot topic. What are we asking them to do? And then how are we paying them? Because, if you think about it, it is hard and expensive to land a new customer. So once we've captured that new logo, we want to make sure we sell as much product or solution offerings to them as possible. And that tends to be the role of that customer success resource. So we want to make sure that there's some skin in the game for that role as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine for customer success, typically what I see is, maybe it's more like 90-10, 80-20, base to variable. Whereas, true folks that are influencing the sale, like account executives, maybe it's more 50-50.
Yeah.
Marketing is an interesting one. I think it's traditionally been more bonuses and annual bonuses, quarterly bonuses, but I could see that shifting. What about professional services? I mean, a lot of the folks on this call have professional services teams, support teams. Have you started to see incentive comp filtering into those worlds as well? Where, hey, if you're a professional services team member and you get a project done on time and on budget, why shouldn't you participate in a little bit of the upside there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So professional services, I'm responsible for implementing the software that's been sold. I didn't have a hand in persuading the customer to buy. So our thinking around this role tends to be, while not giving them at-risk pay, they can be eligible for a bonus, yes, but it would be on top, right? So it wouldn't be like the 50-50 pay mix that you described. It'd be you have making up salaries here, but you've got a base salary of $100,000. That's great. You get that. And then if you hit the metrics, delivery on time, something on top.
Yep. That makes total sense to me, right? Like if you can reward a professional services team member for hustling and getting that project done, even ahead of time, that's absolutely worth paying out on.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, one more question from Andrea. Do you see revops roles getting paid on MQLs and or SQLs? I haven't seen this. I'm curious. Have you seen revops being paid on MQLs or SQLs?
So there's times where that SDR role sits in revops. And so if there's somebody in there that is, passing along those qualified leads, that person will oftentimes be comped on those. But there hasn't been, a ton of at-risk pay for revops outside of some of those lead qualification roles that are specific to them.
Which is funny, right? Because revops and sales ops are usually the ones administering the sales comp plans, and they're not on incentive comp themselves. Maybe we should change that. But yeah, I would agree, Andrea. I have not seen revops getting comped a lot on MQLs, SQLs. Probably in some organizations where revops is much more instrumental in actually generating those MQLs or SQLs. I imagine that's possible, but I imagine it's less common. All right, guys, we're getting towards the end here. We covered the 4 points. I thought, by the way, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I think we're all better off learning from your experiences here. All right, real quick, I thought it'd be fun to end with a little bit of a lightning round here. Priya, we're going to start with you. What is the worst performance measure that you have ever seen in a comp plan? Give us a little bit of the context there.
Sure. Yeah, one that comes to mind was the fact that someone had sellers being paid on a subjective measure. So I rate you 1 to 5 on things that are not tied to financial results. So that was issue number 1. And issue number 2.
Subjective, like, how much do we like you at the office kind of thing?
I mean, to them, it must have felt that way. But yes, and everybody ends up at 3. So, okay, great. Well, I guess I must be doing a fine job, right? And we want to drive up pay for performance culture. So a bit of a disconnect there. And then the other issue was the fact that if you would get to 100% of your goal, we all think is you get 100% of the incentive. And that wasn't the case here. So it was, you'd get to 100% of your goal and you'd get, 90% of your target incentive. So your 3 that everybody's getting, you're not getting your full target incentive, but that's the way it was. And it was accepted. And when we came and understood the plans, that was a little bit of a shock. Okay.
And you fired the plan designer on that one.
We help.
That's pretty sneaky to give a sales rep an on target commission, and then if you achieve 100% of your goal, you actually don't make your on target commission. There's a weird, silly, crazy, like a Fox genius there. Elizabeth, what about you? What have you seen worst performance measure you've seen in your career?
I mean, I think most of them are around like subjective activity measures, but there was one where, and this probably goes to maybe a little bit of overpayment too, but there was a pure hunting role where they landed the business and then somebody else took over to manage the account and they moved on to the next one. But they had, their comp plan was they would get a flat commission rate, and it was the same for 3 years of that, business that they landed. So, there were reps that were year 2, year 3 that were earning almost $500,000 from the business that they had booked, year 1 of that plan. And so they just lost all motivation to go after that new business. I applied to work there because it sounded amazing, but it was probably not best for the business. And then it was a really tough thing to unwind as we started talking about the changes that made sense for the organization.
That is incredible. I was actually going to make that same joke where I was going to be like, please let me know the name of that company because I want to go work there. So yeah. You're a sales rep there. You're in year 3, 4, or 5 of your tenure, and you could sell not a single deal that year and make $500,000.
I'll make $500,000 because it was the same commission rate. It didn't trail, didn't get reduced or and it was for 3 years, which is a significant amount of time for the fact that a different person is the one that's then taking on that business and growing it. So it was a good time to be a business development rep.
That's awesome. That's a good one. Thank you, guys. All right, Elizabeth, Priya, really thank you for your time. You guys, if there are any other questions, fire away now. Otherwise, oh yeah, there is a couple more here. Okay, so another question. We'll just move into questions if that's okay with you guys. So what are the rates we are seeing paid for the marketing coverage roles? That was from Andrea. Do you guys have any sense for what rates you're seeing around on that marketing's getting paid, or at least even maybe the weighting of their comp plans there? I think.
Yeah, so they're going to be similarly less aggressive than, like kind of like what Grayson was talking about before with customer success. You're not going to see marketing on a 50-50 plan. They might be 90-10. And then, their leverage is going to be, again, a little bit lower. So you might be looking at a, 1.5 or 2. So the rates are going to be lower, certainly than, an account executive or business development rep, but there's still some incentive for them to continue to drive that strategy to acquire new customers.
Yeah. Look, the rates will be what they should be once you've kind of backed into what their goals are and what their target incentive are. It's really hard to say. I think on it, it's very case by case. What Christina asked: are you seeing RevOps roles getting paid for variable? I think we kind of answered that one. If so, what are the areas metrics? Do we agree that RevOps, typically we don't see RevOps on incentive comp right now? Is that your opinion? Your experience?
Typically, yeah. If you're starting to put lead gen roles in there, then that looks a little bit different. But in terms of, the majority of the roles in RevOps, we're not seeing them on incentive comp. Okay,
great. And then John asks, at what point does opening up incentive comp eligibility differ from just putting folks on bonuses or OKRs? If market is getting paid on incentive comp, would sales RevOps naturally ask to be eligible as well? How do you guys think about that when you're counseling your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. I'll start, Priya, and then let me know if you think I missed anything. We have, a couple of basic criteria that we think about when we're determining if somebody's eligible. So, the first one is, can they influence a sale? Can they influence the customer? Do they have direct interaction with the customer to persuade them to buy? So when we're talking about marketing, for example, you could argue that the person that is driving the strategy on social, where then the customer clicks the link and it takes them to the website, that social media post or that digital marketing spend has influenced the customer, and you've had contact with the customer to persuade them to buy. So those are the things that we think about if we're going to determine somebody should be eligible, not necessarily contributing to the sales process, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Priya, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, no, I think you got it. That eligibility criteria is really the one where we decide, are you at risk pay or something else, right? Because there is that something else, like I talked about the on top bonus from our professional services example. So this is not to say there's base salary and that's it for these types of roles.
Yep. Gennaro asks, are we seeing a bigger base percentage in the SDR BDR role? What do you guys think on that one?
Yeah.
So the
I think,
SDR, yeah.
Yeah, I typically think of the SDR BDR as getting kind of like 2/3 base, 1/3 variable. Is that roughly in line with what you guys are seeing?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more like 80-20 for the SDR type of role is pretty common.
Okay. Genka asked, what are you seeing in terms of channel partnership incentives, and how those compare to direct sales? What do you guys see around paying channel partners?
Yeah, so I would say the roles that are those, partner managers or strategic alliance roles tend to have a little bit less pay at risk, and they are the measures that we're seeing there are aligned to either the geo that they're supporting or the book of partners that they're responsible for the care and feeding of. But those roles do tend to be on at-risk pay.
Yeah, I imagine it depends on how mature your partner strategy is. And in terms of actually compensating the channel partners directly, though, themselves, rather than just the channel manager, what do you guys see around that in terms of software companies paying their channel partners?
Yeah. So every software company, if they have a partner ecosystem, which they tend to, they've got a partner program, and in that partner program are the rates that they get paid, right, as well as the enablement tool. So this is outside of sales comp, but yes, there are, you do business with us, you give us a lead, you get paid X. You actually close a deal with us, you get paid Y. And those incentives to the partners vary based on, maybe how much business they're bringing to you. Which of the partners that matter, you'll likely tend to pay them more.
Yeah. I see tiered structures there where anywhere from kind of 10 to 30% of kind of new ACV, kind of in those ranges. I like this one from Levon. What's an acceptable timeline for plan issuance in a new fiscal year? This is a topic close to home for many of the folks in this call, I would imagine. How soon should you be getting your plans out in a new fiscal year, you guys?
So
there's a should, there's how quickly should you,
and what happens.
What happens, right?
Yeah. So in terms of plan issuance, we would say the plan should be issued at the beginning of the year, as soon as possible. What oftentimes happen, and is not uncommon, is you separate out the plan design and the quota. So you can get some, oftentimes, and it depends on the plan, because you may need the quota to build commission rates if you have commission rates. But oftentimes what we'll see is they can get the plan structure out at the beginning of the year, and then you may have to wait a month into the fiscal for the quota. But obviously the guidance is sooner rather than later.
Sure. I'm curious, what do you see there? What's a typical range for your clients around how quickly they get their plans out?
Oh gosh, we've seen all over the board. I mean, ideally you get it at sales kickoff, and they do a whole big communication around that. And that's great, because that's usually close to the start of the new fiscal year. And, at times we've seen plans get delayed, 4 months out, and folks are still kind of wondering, one, what am I getting paid on? And two, what is the goal, to Elizabeth, your point, that I'm trying to hit? And those, for various reasons, sometimes lag, and some organizations are, this is how we do things, and they're okay with it.
Yeah.
But ideally we'd see it early.
Yeah. You really don't want to go, 30 days, maybe 60 days. I've seen companies pay just a percentage of OTC for like 6 months after the fiscal year, just because they haven't got their stuff together. So yeah, but yeah, Levon, sooner the better, ideally within the first, 30 days. Jacob asks, where you have different products with dedicated reps, what do you think about incentivizing cross-selling? Okay, so different products with different reps. How do you guys think about that?
Yeah. So for this one, the rep, we can refer to this as an overlay rep. So I'm responsible for selling X, Y, and Z product. I carry a number that's associated with the product, and likely there's somebody else also in that account with me, right? So, you do have a number, yes, and you are incentivized for cross-selling within that existing account, but you are not the DQC or discrete quota carrier, because there's somebody else managing that account that holds the quota. So think of it as an overlay. You have a discrete quota carrier, owns $1 million. Your product specialist is responsible for, say, $20 million selling their product into 15, 20 accounts.
But what about the situation where you have Susan, who's only selling product A, and Bob, who's only selling product B? How do you think about incentivizing Susan to also get her customer to buy product B? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah. There's oftentimes things like lead referral, or pass on a lead that you hear from your contact, and then it's either qualified or closes. You get some sort of incentive as part of passing on that lead.
Yeah.
That's not
yes. You do want. Yeah, I would agree, right, Jacob? You do want to incentivize those dedicated reps somehow. And then I think that's it for questions, you guys. And we've kind of come up to the end of the hour anyway. So Roxy, do you want to come back in and do your thing?
Hello, everyone. That was awesome. Thank you for all of that great information and the advice. And also really love to see so much crowd participation today. All those questions were awesome.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, that was really great. Love to see it. So before I close this out, I just want to get one final takeaway from each of y'all that you want our audience members to walk away with today. So Priya, if you want to go ahead and go first.
Sure. I would say a takeaway is quota setting matters in regards to compensation, and it's hard.
Yep, agreed with that. Elizabeth, you go, and then I'll come up with one here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, how, really starting to think through, how has technology and data impacted our roles today? And, does that, potentially impact how they're going to get paid in the future?
Yeah, totally. And I think for me, Roxy, I really like this theme of incentive comp spreading out into the other parts of the organization. So I would just say, if you really want to drive a high performance culture across the board, think about using incentive comp and functions other than just sales.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, guys. So we're going to wrap things up and just want to say a big thank you to everyone that participated today. Priya, Elizabeth, Grayson, y'all were awesome. You really kept the crowd engaged today. So thank you so much for that. We love to see it. Everyone, please check out our wonderful sponsor, Performio. They're doing great things. Be sure to check them out on their website. And thanks again, everyone. The recordings and key takeaways will be available on our site shortly after this. And don't forget to check for our upcoming events as well. And the three of you guys, I'll see y'all backstage. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you, everybody.